Thanks a lot for having shit.
Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi everyone, welcome to our channel today. We have Szabotage, you are a street artist living in Hong Kong but from the UK. Yes, and we have Yacht. You are the chairman of Animoca brand, so you are one of the most well-connected people I know that in the NFT world. So today we have both Yacht and Szabotage to talk about art and cryptos. So let's start with you first. What made you move to Hong Kong from UK and started painting on the street?
Yeah, at the time, it was about 6 years ago, I was working as an interior designer, and I was finishing off a project in Wan Chai, which is a hotel that brought me out here. But I always had been an artist in the UK as well, and I just saw a great opportunity here to bring my art to Hong Kong.
Yes. You used to call yourself urban artist, like you have particular interest painting urban environment.
Yeah, as I said, I was an interior designer previously and trained as an architect. So for me, I'm very at home drawing buildings and very comfortable with that. And I enjoy painting in the urban environment wherever I am. So.
Yes. I saw you've painted on cars, on recycled cans, and you have done on the wall, on the building. Like, what made you move to digital? Like, how's that experience going to change for collectors and people who enjoy arts, like seeing them physically on the wall, on the car?
I don't know, stay there long enough, I might just paint you. I do tend to just paint anything and everything. So if there's any opportunity to sort of test out my skills and my creativity, I'll use that to my advantage. And it just develops me as an artist overall.
Yeah, what about yourself? Like, how did you get into crypto to begin with?
Well, I mean, I think our big moment in crypto was we got involved through Cryptokitties. And I think for the audience that's not maybe totally familiar with this, Cryptokitties is essentially people breeding digital cats, right? And picking more cats out of them. But each cat was unique in its design. And perhaps the one big thing through blockchain technology was that because every cat was unique and could only be bred from the original Gen 0 cats, meant that the ownership for the first time ever in the digital content space didn't belong to the company that made them, but to the players that bred them. And that may seem a little esoteric because the actual sort of content was still digital, but now that the players owned them, it created a phenomenon like around late 2017, early 2018, because people started trading these cats to the tunes of millions of dollars because they really owned them. And that was the beginning. And because our studio was involved in helping build that, we became an early shareholder in Dabra Labs, that basically was the developer and producer of Cryptokitties. And we saw how that could change gaming, but we also see how that could really change the art world. Because now as well, with artists, you can create a digital permanent provenance that is provable. Because I think that one of the big challenges with content on the digital world is that everything's a copy, right? The original internet 1.0 or 2.0, if you want to call it Web 2.0, is still a giant photocopier. You make an art, like you take a photo on Instagram, it looks really cool, but who really owns it, right? And there's so many cases where people just rip off the photo and then just display it somewhere, and you can't prove the provenance from a digital standpoint.
To own the copyright.
Well, even if you own the copyright, it's hard to enforce because, does he really own it? Do you actually go through a process of trademarking your work every time you paint it? And sometimes even if it's a copy, it's one thing, but you really want the original. And that's something that you can now prove with blockchain. So it's even less about crypto. Sometimes the term crypto gets confused because people think about Bitcoin and Ethereum from a sort of trading and speculative standpoint. But the technology of blockchain allows us, through the same distributed ledger technology, a permanent record. So the original creator or the origin of it is stamped, so to speak, forever.
Is that related to the topic, to the NFT?
Yes.
As in non-fungible?
Correct.
Token.
Non-fungible tokens, yeah.
Right.
So I think the big thing about non-fungible tokens is that in the same way that a fungible token like Bitcoin is the same kind of, call it digital currency, a non-fungible token is one where each single token is scarce and unique. But scarce and unique doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be made just one of one unit. you could still make millions of an NFT, but because it's on a digital ledger, it now has a unique journey. Right? So it's just like, you buy all these paintbrushes probably, or whatever you do to make your paintings, but the one that you buy new has only a certain value, but maybe the one where you painted something that was special, that became famous, that paintbrush now has added provenance. So when you purchased the paintbrush, everything was worth, I don't know, $10, $20, $100. But that particular paintbrush that had this, let's call it $1 million street art, now becomes valuable. And that's now possible with non-fungible tokens because you have a record.
So like a normal token is like US dollar. You can use the token to buy anything. But like a non-fungible token is one token represent one piece of work and cannot be like replaced with other tokens.
Well, non-fungible token means that every unit is not divisible in that sense, right? So it means it is scarce. And the value is a little bit like art, right? Even if you make 20 editions of one piece of art, which may be the same, each of these editions are different, right? 1 of 20 or 20 of 20 also have variability in value. So they may be the same art, they may look exactly the same, it might be a lithographic copy, but somehow 1 of 20 is more valuable than 19 of 20, for instance. And that is now true with non-fungible tokens. And especially in the last 2 to 3 months, that movement has really picked up in a big, big way.
So Szabotage, like since when you started to like notice NFT and decide to move into this sector? Because I was talking to my friend and was wondering how is that different? Like you have a print of the picture and you can still buy it with actual money. And you can sign a contract, say I own a copyright, right? So it sounds a bit complicated, but that's more of a conventional way how we do it. So the idea of blockchain technology behind it, of it's kind of cool and trendy. Is that also one of the reasons why a lot of cool artists like you like to move into that sector? Would that be one of the reasons?
The amount of times that I get asked to actually reproduce a bit of street art, I'll be a rich man. So I think this now opens up new doors, capturing it digitally and giving it that authenticity that it needs, and limiting the amount, the runs of that and the blockchain. It's great that I extend the work further afield, and the art itself, it might be painted over the next day. So we have that longevity now. It just seems that the potential's endless, really.
I think the other thing that's really interesting, when you think about what makes so powerful about blockchain really is connecting communities and actually inserting a form of value into communities that wasn't possible before, like Bitcoin or even all the various altcoins out there. You're creating value that is somehow measurable in a community aspect. I think that's also true for non-fungible tokens. One of the challenges about street art, as special as it is the fact that it obviously passes because it decays, it disappears. And there's that element that's part of the reason why I think it's so beautiful, because it's not forever. On the other hand, it's really hard to build community around that because people can't own it. Right? And so if you don't own it, then it's hard to build community around it. Right? If people who are collectors of paintings, they end up becoming, frankly, the biggest promoters of the product. Not just because of value, but because they love it and because they can show it. But if there's something you can't show, you can say, hey, this is a great street artist, and this is this wonderful thing I saw off the streets in Wanchai, but you can't see it anymore. It's really hard to build that. And I think with crypto and blockchain, that's now possible. But also, you now build a community of collectors around it who then promote the product, who appreciate it, and that in itself creates an audience, which then becomes valuable for the artist itself.
How do you think the collectors can promote them through this community?
Well, broadly in history, all art is made famous by the collectors, not necessarily by the artist itself. There's countless sad stories about artists basically sort of, painting themselves to death and loving the work, but actually never really making that much money until they have unfortunately passed away. And that's not a function of, it's a function of the patron-artist relationship. And I think that's an area where I think the crypto and blockchain world will change as well, because now, because of that, you can actually take a transaction fee of subsequent sales on secondary sales as well. And there's many stories now in the crypto world where artists are making more money on the secondary or tertiary sales of the assets than on the first. I mean, imagine if the estate of Picasso was actually able to get a cut every time a Picasso was sold. You know, it would actually be meaningful in more than just making money for the Picasso estate. It actually would also be a way to reinvest into the product or into its promotion, right? So there's actually a good reason to do that, but that's never how the collector world worked. But of course, the ones who had the money, and frankly also the ability to do the promotion, have those assets. And now, unfortunately, when the artist dies, the scarcity is finite, right? There's no more art to be made. We can't just do sort of scribbles on sort of napkins anymore. Then those become valuable and they promote it and it becomes famous that way. And so I think crypto and blockchain accelerates that narrative in a way that was just not possible before.
I see. I had an experience using the website, buying like a small piece of art with the NFT. So it's like a collective of people can own like a painting all together. And that's actually really interesting. The parts my friend bought was like a one dark piece. Right. and he has another part of the armpit of the girl. And I'm actually really surprised that people actually go on the website and try to buy like a small piece from like one painting. What is like the experience of like buying or collect art in that way? It's really new and shocking for me, but there's actually the market there.
I'm gonna have to paint more armpits. Well, I think what's really interesting from an artist's point of view, and I don't really want to talk too much about the money side of things, is that, you know, we've got to try and fund ourselves somehow. And I love to paint on the street. That's where I'm at home. That's where you meet the community and connect with people. And I think this just gives you more of a opportunity to be able to do more of what you like. And, you know, if there's some financial gain to come out of that, that's kind of great. It just means that I'm encouraged to do more of that. And it's just about painting more in the urban streets. I think sometimes we're always, you know, it's a battle I always have. Do I do street art or do I work in a studio and work on a collection that's more likely to pay my rent? You know, hopefully now it can be a bit more of the other, and not so sort of commercial, I guess, more sort of, you know, representing what I want to put out there and what I want to put in the streets.
One of the added things about when you talk about digital art is you can now add new elements of interaction that wasn't possible before. So in this case, you know, whether you buy the armpit or you buy a part of a puzzle, there's a collectability. Maybe someone wants all the pieces of the puzzle or whichever. There's now also new models in the crypto world where you can't actually buy the NFT. You have to earn it, or you have to play a game to get it, or you have to do sort of a staking concept where then they mint these NFTs, which could then form part of a puzzle. So there's a lot of creativity that can go into that. And art is, I mean, at least from my perspective, an experience, right? When you look at it, you're not just looking at a blank picture, you're experiencing something, which is why art can be so valuable for some and frankly not valuable to others, right? It means something to every person individually. And that's the same thing, but now you can make that experience maybe even through the collection of appreciation. You know, whether you buy an armpit, well, maybe that is a special experience for someone. Who am I to judge whether that armpit is sort of valuable or not? And I think you might be referring to some of the work for Pascal Boyard, who was one of the earlier pioneers in this space, who basically did street art and experimenting with that. But obviously, the space is just really in the beginning days.
How big is the market now? Like, how many people are actually on that platform trading? Because it's very new to me, and I'm still trying to understand and experience like how and why people are like purchasing art in this way. It's just really not conventional. And how far and how large do you think this market will grow?
So it's grown a lot. Prior to this recent boom, the NFT space in terms of market value was roughly $300 million, which is small compared to the sort of broader crypto space, which is more like $300 billion. But the people who owned NFTs were only 150,000. Now, the thing to understand about that is it's 150,000 people who have a lot of money, right? So it's essentially whales that are generally trading amongst themselves. And as a high-level sort of very senior person I know at Christie said, in the world of art, you only need two, right? You don't need, like in the fungible trading world, you want to have thousands to validate a value of something because they're essentially sort of trading high volume for a fungible token. But in the non-fungible world / art world, perhaps in this case, you really only need two, basically who bid for it, and that determines the price. And that's the difference, right? Christie's and Sotheby's don't make an art market because millions of people want that art. You only need a selection of people who really want that, and that sets the platform. But the world of collectibles as well, which is where this intersects as well. Some people may be collecting things just for art, but now you can have collectability into it as well. So it intersects, and collectability itself is actually a $370 billion market, which includes stamps or baseball cards or even physical cars, right? These are all forms of collectibles. And that fusion of collectability and art is now something that blockchain and crypto makes even more interesting.
How is it truly unique when I can own this picture, like it's like a print, right? A lot of people can't own the same print. And you mentioned this experience, like in a conventional way. When I enjoy art, I like to actually look at that. Oh, I buy the painting, I hang it on the wall at my place. So when it's all digitalized, it's like looking at them in front of the computer. Can you actually print them out and actually use them in a physical way and experience the actual painting?
I have a strong view on this, but maybe we'll see what the artist has to say about this, about originality versus prints.
I guess it's for me it relates more to the street art, and as we're mentioning, it's so ephemeral nowadays that you have to try and capture that, and so whether that is someone taking a photograph of that or converting it digitally, it's continuing its journey, and there's a value to that.
On the originality versus the copy, if you've been to museums, which I love going to museums, but I can't say that the experience of the art, especially when you go to something like the Mona Lisa, you can barely even get a view because it's like everyone's crowded around. I was actually just in Vienna 7 months ago, and we're just like looking at a painting from Klimt, and it was impossible to see despite the size of it because everyone was crowding around taking photos and whatever. Frankly, as an experience, maybe not the best way to view it. However, it was still magical because of the ambience, maybe because of the museum, maybe because people around it viewed it in such a way of wonder and awe. And so it's kind of like a performance almost. You felt like, okay, right? I think the same is true with all art in crypto and blockchain as well. We think of digital because we've been so, I would say, gotten used to the idea that everything in digital is a copy because that's what the internet was doing to us. We've become desensitized to just a general form of viewing pictures. It's like when you watch, action movies and people die, and then you actually see in the real world people die. You have to quickly process, wait, that actually happened for real, as opposed to just a movie, because we've been a little bit desensitized. But once you realize that actually there's an originality behind it, actually you crave for that, just like with a Rolex as well, you or with a car, you want the original, and that provenance is, I think, the real valuable part there. Not just manufactured, because the other thing is now is the history of it matters as well. You can make a copy, but it's just something new. But that particular painting or asset or whatever has a history. Wedding rings, I think, I like wedding rings as a good example because the silver isn't particularly valuable. It was probably made by someone, who knows, 30, 40 years ago. But the ring itself has now an attached sentimental value after it's gone through multiple generations of the same family line. Most people don't care about it, but to that family, it's completely priceless. What? It's a memory, it's sentimentality, but it's not actually anything of real value that you might think of. And that's the part which is so powerful about art and value and actually sentimentality attached to it.
And for the artist, would that change the experience of creating the art? Like, you will still need to focus on actually painting the original paintings first, and afterwards you need to apply that on the blockchain, put it on the website. How do you think the process will change your creativity and experiencing in art?
Hopefully it won't change too much, and hopefully I'll continue the way I do. But I think there will be an awareness of how maybe the narrative changes a little bit more and can be extended a bit more. And it's almost that sentimental factor to it, that, you know, whatever happened during that life of that urban art, things can be captured and retold maybe further down the line, because that's now become an asset that people want to embrace and extend on, really, I guess.
I've learned a lot about arts and crypto in your way, like to use blockchain more, right? It's a technique we can apply on art. So I'm really excited about the future, where the new technology is going to bring us and bring the new experience of us enjoying the arts. And it's actually really valuable because we are able to keep the memories, not just on the wall of the building, not just on the car, but forever, and for more people to share and enjoy. So it's very exciting, and thanks a lot for having. Sorry.